Welcome to Monster Girl 101. If you're wondering about the source of this image, it is from Monster Musume. Great anime. It's a Monster Girl harem anime. And also obligatory hello YouTube! I am teaching chat about monster girls. They are totally here out of their free will, and I totally did not force them to be here. Do not check for guns behind their heads. There are none, I promise. Okay. So, to begin, y'all may be wondering, what is and isn't a monster girl? You'll see a myriad of definitions all around town, but nobody can really give you a cohesive one, so I'm gonna give one to you right now. This is me. I am a monster girl. That's why I have this very nice picture of me here. It'll give you a bit of an idea of what a monster girl is. So, monster girls. Are they monsters? Girls. Congratulations, they're a monster girl. There's more to it, though. There is more to it. A definition that I saw floating around is okay. A monster girl is a creature that at the very least has the head and parts of her torso that are vaguely that of a human woman. And if we see this picture over here, you can see Allie definitely has a human head. She definitely has a human torso, save for the scales over here. Yes, those are scales. That's not blood. Those are scales. So she kind of fits the definition, no? She has a human head, human torso, boob, monster girl. But they also possess certain physical traits that mark them as monster-like. So even though Allie has human arms for the most part, if she were to say gain cat paws or dragon paws or whatever the fuck, she would still be a monster girl and not just a monster, because as I said, she still has a human head and torso. But again, this is a definition that varies widely. I'm not entirely sure that I buy into it, because that's exactly what this next slide is about. I don't buy that definition. What does it actually take to be a monster girl? This over here is a bit more monster-like than Allie. As you can see, she has a human head, human torso, but the rest of her is fairly monster-like. My oh my oh my. So I have a few questions to ask you, chat. This is an interactive presentation. I want you to contribute to this as much as I am. So, first question. Does not being human immediately make you a monster girl? I wouldn't say so, because I feel like the human part is just as important as the monster part. That seems like too vague and too broad a brush to paint this with. Absolutely not, no. So I would say, the definition that we saw before of them needing to have some human components and some monster components kinda works. You can get into the nitty-gritty details, but that seems to be a fairly reasonable definition. But then, we get even deeper into the weeds. Are vampires monster girls? Vampires, for the most part, don't really possess too many monster-like qualities depending on what kind of vampire you're looking at. Like, if you're looking at a vampire with really sharp teeth but generally just looks human, would you consider them a monster girl? What would you think? Would you say yes? If you say yes, why do you say yes? I feel like I would consider a vampire monster girl, especially if she can transform into a bat, because that's a pretty monster-like quality to have. I think monster here is the word that we really should be targeting and defining. And monster to me just seems like anything that is like non-normatively human. That's kind of the angle that I'm getting at here. But we're gonna get even deeper into the weeds throughout this presentation. That's something that I've seen a lot of people kind of get a bit tossed on, because when I think monster girls, I think cat girls, alligator girls, dragon girls, what have you. Vampires always seem like a little too Western for them for some reason, but I would consider vampires monster girls. But I have another question. Would you consider elves monster girls? Because you know what? I have an argument for and against them being monster girls. I have an argument for and against it, and this is probably gonna be my one incredibly subjective and incredibly controversial take. I consider elves monster girls, but that is because I consider humans monster girls. I consider any type of girl a monster girl, and I consider every type of boy a monster boy, and here is why. I think that elves are basically just humans, but a more perfect version of humans. In many ways, elves aren't really monsters because they're less monstrous than humans. Humans are more monstrous than elves, especially if we're talking about elves from like the Lord of the Rings, sort of Tolkien-esque elves. But that doesn't mean that they're not completely outside the monster spectrum. I think that there is a spectrum that like everybody kind of falls on, and humans are on it. Because when I think of the term monster, I don't just think of like physical traits. I also think of like morality and things like their inclination towards good, their inclination towards evil. Elves are a lot more perfect than humans. So in that sense, humans are more monstrous than elves. But that doesn't necessarily mean that elves don't do any wrong. I think that elves can be imperfect, it's just they're more perfect than humans. And so if we're thinking of monsters and the monster spectrum as operating on a scale of like, you know, morality as monstrousness, I would say that we can all kind of belong on the monster spectrum to a certain extent. I don't know. That is up for debate, you know? What is up with this elf propaganda? I like elves. I think elves are cool. Elves are really cool. It's why Freerun is my favorite anime, but I digress. That is my most flaming hot take of the night. Don't worry. That is my one indulgent take of the night. Another question that I have is, does it necessarily make somebody a monster girl if they have, like, some animal traits? Like, if somebody just had cat ears, would that make them a monster girl? Are angels not monsters if they're perfect? I don't know if many angels are perfect. I'm not entirely sure, because most depictions of angels that I see I've never really seen a depiction of an angel where they're like completely faultless and pure, like absolved of blame or guilt. So I don't know. If they're attached, then yes. Okay. So we're getting some answers here. Maybe closer to the end of this stream, we will come up with a definition of monster girl that satisfies everybody. These are just some of the questions that I want you to be thinking of when you think of monster girls. Are monsters and monster girls purely about aesthetics and physical traits and what you do and do not have? Or are they more about your heart, your beliefs, the culture that you were raised in? Many questions. Next, I want to give a historical versus anime comparison of monster girls and how they're depicted. Monster girls are not just some new fetish that people have. They have roots in ancient mythology. Medusa, the nymphs, gorgons, sirens, these are all monster girls. And these are monster girls that are traditionally depicted as these evil, unknown, alluring, forbidden temptresses. And that is the reason why I'm so curious about whether being a monster, having monster-like traits is not even completely about just the physical traits, but also about, like, your morality. You know? That's why. That's why I'm bringing it up. Because when you see depictions of monster girls throughout history, it also focuses on, like, their moral attitudes as much as them being like these sexy mermaids with like tails and shit. You know? These are important questions. Exactly. So that's like, you know, you see monster girls in the West, but you also see monster girls in Asia and in the East. Like, cat girls have been a part of Japanese culture for a really, really long time. Creatures like the bakaneko, the nekomata, these are shape-shifting monster, like shape-shifting monsters that exist in Japanese folklore and have existed for like thousands of years. So the cute anime cat girls didn't just come out of nowhere. They're actually like kind of just Japanese icons that were sort of mellowed out and softened over time. They've existed for a long time. I mentioned that. Over there. Yeah. They started out as horrors, but now they are the cute and cuddly cat girls that you see. There is a history to this. It is not just a fetish. Yes. Monster girls. Again, I want to hammer into the point that monster girls are just as much about morality as they are about their physical traits. The monster girl is often depicted as this dangerous or taboo creature. And over here we have a really nice picture. Credit goes to Vife, otherwise known as Six, on my Discord. That is Ali pointing at herself going, "You want me to shut my bitch ass up?" It's really nice. I like it a lot. Monster girls are often depicted as these beings that are like forbidden, from another world, foreign, temptresses. They elicit desires that you're not supposed to have. That's the kind of hentai, the kind of media that I'll often see monster girls depicted in. They're always seen as this creature that is just enough like a human where their foreignness and their strangeness is seen as endearing. And that's interesting to me. They're also often seen as these kind of pagan or anti-Christian figures. Like, I know for a fact that when I was growing up, if I started talking about monster girls and monster anime, my parents would have not let me watch that shit. They caught me watching High School DxD once, and other than the half-naked women on the screen, they were like, "Those are demons and you shouldn't be watching that, Allie." And I think that is a belief that a lot of really hardcore, radical religious folk hold. So it definitely is a thing where monster girls are seen as this taboo, dangerous, kind of anti-pure thing. And this is a point that somebody wanted to add for some reason. I think a part of the reason why monsters can often be seen as dangerous or taboo is because a lot of people kind of have a hard time understanding how being attracted to monster girls makes you or does not make you a furry. And I think my take is that I don't know enough about furry culture, but at the very least, my brand of monster fucking and monster attraction mainly boils down to, like, you know, is the monster in question capable of consenting to your actions, and are they conscious enough to speak like a regular fucking, like, person on your general, like, intellectual wavelength, you know? It's like, I can understand why people find, like, you know, the dragon from Skyrim hot. Because even though it's a literal dragon, they can actually communicate with you and shit. He's like, "Oh, you must become the Elder Scroll, bobbity boobity boo." Versus, like, Toothless from, like, How to Train Your Dragon. They're, like, Toothless literally can't speak to you. Toothless is just going, "Rah, rah, 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 rah." That'd be weird. Toothless is basically a dog. You know? So I think that's something that adds to the general, like, danger and taboo-ness of it, is that this is a topic that a lot of people don't really talk about enough. Is that that's an important part of monster fucking. Do not have sex with Toothless. Do not feel bad if you have feelings for Parthenax, though. Anyway, Next slide. We've talked a lot about the boring stuff, the heavy stuff, the academic stuff. But you may be wondering, okay, now that I have a broad idea of what a monster girl is, what are the different types of monster girls? As we can see, this is not a ranking that I did, this is just a random photo that I found on the internet. But as you can see, there are tons of different kinds of monster girls. And this is a very non-exhaustive list, okay? We've got the furry monster girls. I categorize the furry ones as like, you know, the cat girls, the dog girls, etc., etc. We've got the scaly ones, so okay, like me. I like, you know, Allie is scaly. She has scales. Okay. You got the buggies, the wingies, the tailies, the hornies, haha, funny. 69, haha, funny. You've got a lot of different kinds. There are probably more, so I was gonna ask you if I missed any. The slimies! I forgot about the slimes. The slimes are very, very important. Slimes are probably one of my favorite kinds of monster girls. Indeed, indeed. Yes. Yes. Anyway, there are many different kinds of monster girls. I'd give a presentation on the different kinds, but, well, maybe some other time. Yeah. Aliens, Vlorpies. Oh yeah, the tentacly ones. Tentacly is another kind of monster girl. Many different kinds. Thank you for helping me complete the list. This is a topic that I think is very, very important to touch on now that we've talked about the different types of monster girls. We can talk about how monster girls relate to furries a little bit. This is the furry spectrum. This is a diagram that you may have seen if you are a shitposter online or if you're just chronically online like me. I would say that the line between monster girl enjoyer and furry is to be determined. For me personally, 2 is kind of the very, very limit that I would go. I'm not big on snouts. I'm sorry. I'm a hard 1, kinda teeter into 2 if it's human-like enough. You know? But 3, 4, 5, no, not for me. I'm sorry. That is basically an animal to me. But yeah, no, I'd say most monster girl enjoyers would fall between 1 and 2. No snouts, yeah. Not a big snout person, unfortunately. Yes. 5 is a crime. 4, I'm already kind of questioning you. 3 is like, okay, you're kind, like, I think 3 is where most furries would fall. So, like, you know what? 3, fine, sure. 4, 5, I'm sorry. I just don't think I can do that. I'm sorry. I don't think anybody should really be doing that. I think 4 and 5, no. Like, this is like really the hard line for anyone, I feel. For me, it's really like here, I would say. Yeah. Just a conversation that I thought was worth bringing up. Indeed. Yeah. Now to get on to another topic. The sexy appeal of monster girls. We've learned about their history, but let's be real with ourselves. Would there be so many VTubers that are monster girls if they weren't constantly being seen as these incredibly, you know, attractive and sexually appealing creatures? I think not. There is a reason why there are so many VTuber monster girls. There is a big reason. Beep. These are 2 examples of monster media that you might have seen. These are kind of like primers for anyone that's really, really into monster girls. This over here is a classic harem anime / manga that's pretty solid. Monster Girl Encyclopedia is a series published by Kenko Cross, which has its own fandom. It's basically dedicated to its own kind of lore and approach to Monster Girls that I personally have parts that I like and parts that I don't really quite like. Yeah. Monster Girl Encyclopedia is kind of wild. It is a fandom in and of itself. I own both volumes of it. I have read through all of it. I would not consider Monster Girl Encyclopedia an authority on Monster Girls, really. I would consider it more of like an interpretation of it. Like, it's not the Bible. I would just consider it like, one fetishist's take on it. So this is, this is just an excerpt that I took from Monster Girl Encyclopedia. It'll give you an idea of what kind of stuff you would see. It's really incredibly horny. And so I would treat it more like an interpretation than like the authority. Just because it calls itself the encyclopedia doesn't mean that everything about Monster Girls should be taken from it. Indeed. I will read it. The Monster Girls were created as magical hybrids, combining the traditional blood-drinking, skull-crushing monsters of the age of the former Mimono Lord with the sultry, seductive, and sexy succubus race. What popped out at the end were creatures that still walk on 8 dagger-tipped legs or a million writhing tentacles, but at the same time have rockin' tits and a literally irresistible sexuality. Their monster heritage endows them with superhuman strength and an instinctive urge towards wanton mating, but it also means that they have a great bleep, and I cut the rest of it out for a reason because I don't want to get banned. But that's how all of it reads. It is literally fan fiction. That is what Monster Girl Encyclopedia is. It's fan fiction. It can be entertaining if that's your thing. But it's not like the Bible. Indeed. Anyway, let's get back to the topic at hand. Monsters as villains. I'm gonna go on a bit of a deep dive on how I think being a monster girl is just about having monstrous physical traits as it is about having monstrous moral traits. The term monster implies some kind of adversarial, violent, or other nature. Monster is a very non-normative and ambiguous category. It does not necessarily refer to monster it may not necessarily refer to a set type of traits. The only thing that really defines it is that it's non-human. But what even defines a human? What makes a human human? Would you be less human if suddenly you decided to implant cat ears on your head for whatever reason? What makes you human? What makes you good? What makes you evil? Why are humans, why are humans our basis of morality? Why can't monsters be the good guys? What if we're the bad guys? So many different fucking questions. I've read like 10 different scholarly articles to prepare for this presentation, and all of them are absolute hogwash written by grad students that just want to get their degree, and so I immediately tossed them aside. But the gist of some of the things that I read are that, monsters are being monster-like is just as much about morality as it is physical traits. There was one of them that I read that was actually pretty good, where they talked about humans as this kind of like hero figure, this kind of heroic body, and monsters as being this kind of opposing villainous body. And I found that really interesting because it kind of made me think about how in a lot of monster fucker media and a lot of monster girl media in general, the human is often depicted as like this savior figure that like adopts a monster girl from her abusive monster dimension, shows them how much better it is in the human world, this and this and that. There's so many dimensions to the actual lore of monsters and monster girls in general that gets swept to the side because of the focus on all the huge monster tits and shit, and I find that to be an absolute shame. Like, it's kind of crazy. You'll very rarely ever see too much media where the monster is, like, depicted as the good guy. You'll usually see humans depicted as, like, the savior, like, the self-insert. And I think that's a damn shame. I think there's a lot more, like, there's a lot more potential there. Shrek. I mean, Shrek, yeah, but at the same time, like, that's the reason why Shrek stands out, is because there aren't too many things like it, I would say. Yeah. No. There's a lot of this, you just gotta look is all. Give me examples and I will add it to the presentation. If there is a lot of it, I want to see examples. I think there's just a lot more to be explored, and oftentimes the dynamic that's like the most commonly seen in mainstream media is the heroic human or the self-insert human and the monster that they're trying to integrate into human society for whatever reason. It's like a big thing. It's a really big thing. K-pop Demon Hunters is a pretty good example, I would say. Like, again, it's always, like, I think that's the reason why I like elves, is because even though they're this othered kind of, like, race and, like, humanoid, in Lord of the Rings, at the very least, they're revered and not just treated as, like, fucking weird, you know? I don't know. It was something that I noticed. This wasn't just gonna be about, you know, anime tits. But it is also about anime tits. Anyway, I'm gonna go on a bit more of a deep dive on monster fucking as a cultural phenomenon. If you are unfamiliar, I am a monster fucker. I enjoy monsters. I like eldritch abominations. I like people with tentacles with faces. I like everything. If the dude has a void for a face, I think that's based. When I say monster fucker, I'm talking 69-foot eldritch abomination that speaks in a hollow, barely understandable voice. That's what I'm talking about, baby. Yeah. Anyway, there are lots of different perspectives on monster fucking. Many of them negative. Many of them see it as this weird escapist fantasy for women that are chronically online and need to get, like, you know, sent to a mental institution. But there are lots of different perspectives even within the monster fucking community on what it means to be a monster fucker and why monster fuckers are so prevalent. I think one of the most mainstream depictions of monster fucking that people kind of joke about but don't really delve into is Beauty and the Beast. Beauty and the Beast is a great example. You've seen many different iterations of it over time. It's about this French girl named Belle who falls in love with this big, bad, ugly beast named Adam. I personally think that he was better as the Beast, but you know, people have different perspectives. Anyway, that is a tangent. A lot of mainstream depictions of monster fucking are about, like, taming the beast, overcoming adversity, and, like, curing him of his beastness. But I think that's boring. I see monster fucking not as a linear storyline of a girl curing a guy of his monstrousness, but I see it as a metaphor for unconditional love. And that is the true beauty of monster fucking, okay? It is so easy to feel alienated and like you are never gonna find your person. But monster fucking isn't just about being fucking weird. It's a fantasy. It is a fantasy about finding a love free from judgment, free from any kind of hyper scrutiny of features that don't eventually end up fucking mattering. It is unconditional love, a love that exists beyond societal standards and infrastructures. It does not see love as some kind of cure. I see monster fucking as a full and total acceptance of a person as they are, flaws and all. And monster fucking, and why it is so beautiful, is that it's about, like, not trying to solve the little things that somebody can't fix about themselves, but solving the issues that you have going on within yourself that would find something to, like, judge that person on, you know? Like, this line over here gets me. You don't love someone until they're not a monster. You love them to become a better person. And because you know deep down that that's the love you were trying to find all along. At least that's what monster fucking is for me. That's a hell of a stretch. Well, you know what? If this was about your opinion, this would not be called a Monster Girl presentation. It would be called the Jaeger_SV22 presentation. I think that's what monster fucking really is about. But you know what? It's also about being horny. Okay? There you go! Congratulations! Feel vindicated in your overindulgence of your primal urges. I just gave you a beautiful description of unyielding and unconditional love, but there you go. Anime tits. My goodness. Jesus Christ. Thank you for the hydrate. Some people exist to be haters, but you know what? I don't give a fuck about booze. I see what you applaud. I see what you applaud. I know you. I've seen your history. You can't judge me with the taste that you have. Blah. Blah. Unconditional lust. Go ahead. Go ahead. This is supposed to be at the beginning of the presentation. I think I wanted this to be a part of the monster fucker part. No, I understand why I put this here. There are levels to monster fucking. What I described is probably at level 4. There's more to this, but level 5 was enough to weird me out, so you know it was fucking freaky. Level 4 is probably where I'm at. Like, there's a whole iceberg of levels to this. I don't mean to brand any of you, but I would imagine that most of you fall in level 1. That's okay. Yeah. Where would you say you fall on the monster fucker spectrum? Hey Lucia, how you doing? We're giving a really funny presentation on monster girls and monster fucking right now. You might be interested. Hello Lucia, how you doing? How you doing, buddy? Thank you for the gift subs, 3000 beta. Thank you. Okay. Level 4 monster fucker for you. Based. Level 2. I think the real monster fuckers, not to gatekeep or anything, but the real monster fuckers are like, what if I can fuck the abstract concept of darkness? Like level 5 or level 4. It's like, you know, I want to fuck the abstract concept of time. I want time to turn into a sexy beast of a man and, you know, something not appropriate for Twitch. I feel like that's its own category of monster fucker. It would fall around level 4, maybe even a little bit higher than that. Ride time until you ride time. Yeah. If you can't tell, towards the latter half of this presentation, I kind of lost the plot and started going, huh? I need to add some sex appeal to this presentation. Anyway, that was a very necessary tangent. Moving on. Let's talk about some common misconceptions around monster girls, shall we? I'd imagine a lot of people can understand the appeal of monster girls, But I've also caught a bunch of flack from people that are just like, I don't want to call them normies, but they're basically normies. They'll say a bunch of shit like, aren't monster girls just like a weird sex thing? No. Is that just a weeb thing, or are you only into it because you're into anime? No. Is it just a furry thing? We literally had like 5 different slides showing exactly why being into monster girls isn't a furry thing. Is it just about girls being in cosplay? No! Being a monster enjoyer and being a monster fucker, it's a lifestyle. It is a lifestyle choice. It is a deeply, deeply, deeply profound and rich field that often gets shunned because of all the anime titties that lie on the surface. But no, there is lore, there is heart, there is philosophy. Monster girls are not just about anime titties. It is a way of life. My god! Also, I really like this anime. Really like this anime. My goodness. We can also talk about the popularity of different monster girls, if we're talking about monster girls in popular media. I already asked you guys where you fall on the monster fucker spectrum. A lot of the ones that fall on level 4 were the first ones to talk, but I think there are lots of people on level 1 that are feeling a little bad about being on level 1, but this is your time to shine. Do you see that? Most people that are into monster girls are into very, very safe kinds of monster girls. Fox girls, cat girls, demons, dragon girls. Being a dragon girl enjoyer, being a dragon girl in and of itself, very basic. Imagine being a dragon girl. Couldn't be me. Boring. Cringe. Lame. But I also got this poll from Reddit, so maybe we just make our own poll. Maybe we don't consult Reddit. At the very end of this presentation, I'm gonna find one of those sites that lets people like input their favorite monster girl, and we can try and see from my chat, which is obviously smarter and better than Reddit, what the most popular kind of monster girl is. If it's dragon, we're gonna be running it again because I want you to be honest with me. I don't want you to pander to me. Alright? Honesty is the policy. Yes. That's a low bar to be better than Reddit. I mean, Reddit is kind of just for guys that are like really, really, really into Rick and Morty and think that they're smarter than everyone, so... Being, like, I can agree with that take. Being a Redditor really isn't a very high bar to clear in terms of, like, being smart. Redditors think they're a lot smarter than they actually are. I embrace it, I'm fucking stupid. And that makes me smarter than most Redditors. Yeah. I had to add something to this presentation that would make it interesting. To catch your eyes a little bit. Here's some of my favorite monster girl artists. You may notice that they all have something in common. There's Meru. I'm a very big fan of Meru's work. Very beautiful and distinct art style. There's Dives. Very, very skilled animator. Kind of falls a little more, like a little further down the monster spectrum. And there's Space Binky, who I've voiced shitposts of before. They all have something in common, though. And I think a lot of people... We don't have to say exactly what it is, but I think a lot of people here can kind of get what I'm putting down. They have something in common, and that is... They're all very talented. Yeah. I don't know what you could have possibly been thinking of. They're just very talented. I don't know where your mind went. They're just very talented. Thank you for the 4 months, Lucas. Thank you. Aha. They're just very talented. There are a bunch of topics that I wanted to fit into this, but I ran out of time, and I was also like, am I really going to put this much effort into a Twitch presentation? No. These are things that you would cover in Monster Girl 102, not Monster Girl 101. These are the extra things that people who are curious about more would delve into. Womb tattoo types. A study of horns and tails and the differences of their usage and design. Seriously. Why tentacles? I could do a whole presentation on tentacles. I just love them so much. The fascination with breeding. Why is breeding such a focal point of Monster Girl hentai and Monster Girl discussions in general? You know the answer, but I'm not gonna say it on here. You can let it bounce around your head a little bit. And much, much more. There are very many other different things. So yes, that is my presentation slash semi-rant slash semi-delusional episode on Monster Girls. Questions? Concerns? Why? Because I thought it'd be funny! I thought it would be funny. Slightly concerned, but I have no questions. That didn't take too long. I thought it would take a little bit longer. But then I was like, there's only so much I can say on Twitch before I literally start breaching like TOS. So I was like, nah, I think I'll play it safe. Monster Girl presentation. The best thing to do when you are teaching a Twitch chat is giving them the resources to ask questions, not giving them the answers. Not once in this presentation did I ever say what the definition of a monster was. And I'd imagine a lot of people were very, very, very offended by the definition that I personally believe in. Which is that monster girls are not as defined by their physical traits as they are about their moral traits. And that humans are just as monstrous as any other kind of monster girl, if not more. We are all monster girls, chat. Even you. The 95% male audience that is watching this right now. You are a monster girl. And this is how you're gonna be finding out. I am so sorry. You're a monster girl too. She says, pointing at her 95% male chat. Ooh! This is how you're finding out. Yay! And these were the sources that I cited. There weren't very many, because the other ones kinda were a little much. But yeah, that's my presentation.